They say your best friend knows all your secrets. Mine decided to steal my husband, and she didn't use an affair to do it. She used a red bracelet and a doll I found under my bed. I remember the exact quality of the light on those early Saturday mornings, how it would stream through our kitchen window, catching the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny fairies. Daniel would be at the small Formica table scribbling crossword puzzles with a cheap pen, and I'd be humming scrambling eggs in our chipped ceramic bowl. We didn't have much. His job as a junior architectural draftsman paid the bills, but not for extravagances. Our couch was secondhand, and the car made a whirring, rattling sound on cold starts, but none of it mattered. Our love felt like a living, breathing thing in that house, a warmth that filled every corner. When Tonya came to visit for the first time since our wedding, I was bursting to show it all off. We had been friends since we were girls, sharing secrets on sticky summer nights, dreaming of our futures. Her dreams were always gilded with images of penthouse suites and designer labels, while mine were painted with the softer hues of companionship and a home filled with laughter. She arrived in a cloud of expensive perfume, her heels clicking decisively on our scuffed wooden floors. "Amar, it's so cozy," she'd exclaimed, hurries doing a swift, inventory-taking sweep of the living room. I, beaming, missed the subtle judgment in her tone. When Daniel came in from the garage, wiping grease from his hands after a futile attempt to fix the lawnmower, I saw her look him over. He was dressed in a simple, clean t-shirt and jeans, but he carried himself with an innate, quiet assurance that she mistook for the posture of hidden wealth. "That husband of yours," she'd whispered to me later, "he has an aura. A man like that isn't meant for a simple life." I just laughed, thinking it a compliment. After that, Tanya became a fixture. She'd show up with a bottle of wine far too expensive for our budget, insisting we open it. She started helping me cook, but her help always involved positioning herself near Daniel, asking him deep questions about his 5-year plan and his investments. She began bringing him gifts. First, it was a sleek, stainless steel pen. "A man with your ideas shouldn't be using disposable ones," she said, her hand lingering on his as she passed it to him. He seemed flustered but polite, tucking it into his shirt pocket. Then came the bracelet. It was a weeknight. Tonya had come over for dinner. "I saw this and thought of you, Daniel," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. She held out an intricately braided red cord. "It's for protection. For your big presentation next week, it's been blessed." Daniel, ever the pragmatist, gave a small, awkward laugh. "I'm not really a jewelry guy, Tonya." "But it's not jewelry," she insisted, her gaze intense. "It's a shield. Please? For my peace of mind?" She looked at me, and I, ever the peacemaker, nodded. "Go on, Dan. It's sweet of her." Reluctantly, he allowed her to tie it around his wrist. I remember noticing how her fingers seemed to caress his skin as she fastened the knot. That was the moment the season changed in our home. It was as subtle as a shift in barometric pressure before a storm. Daniel started wearing the bracelet every day, never taking it off. He became withdrawn, his mind 1,000 miles away during our quiet evenings. The easy physicality of our marriage, the casual touches, the way I'd rest my head on his shoulder while we watched TV, began to feel strained. When I reached for his hand, he would sometimes pull away, as if my touch was an electric shock, before mumbling an apology about being jumpy. The sleep-talking started a month after the bracelet appeared. I'd wake to the sound of his murmuring. At first, it was incoherent. Then, one night, I heard it clearly, a desperate, longing sigh. "Tonya." My blood went cold. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was a dream, a coincidence. The dread became a cold, hard stone in my stomach. I started cleaning with a frantic, nervous energy, as if I could scrub the unease from the very walls. One afternoon, while sweeping under our bed, the broom handle hit something. I got on my hands and knees and reached into the dust-shadowed space. My fingers closed around a small, lumpy object wrapped in rough cloth. I pulled it out and sat back on my heels, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was a doll, crudely stitched. It was pinned through with thorns, and its head was smeared with a dark, ashy paste. Where its eyes should have been, 2 small, blank cowrie shells stared back at me, seeing nothing and everything at once. A faint, unpleasant smell of decayed herbs clung to it. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial my mother's number. When I described it to her, her silence was heavier than any scream. "Amara," she finally said, her voice old and tired, carrying the weight of a homeland she'd left behind. "That is Wanga, that is Juju. Someone is tying his spirit, pulling him away from you. They are feeding his mind poison until his heart forgets you." I felt the world drop out from under me. I confronted Daniel that night, holding the vile little effigy in my trembling hand. His face went pale, but his eyes were vacant, confused. "What is that? Why would you have that, Amara? It's disgusting." He didn't deny it with the fury of an innocent man, but with the confusion of one who was lost. He just turned and walked away, touching the red bracelet on his wrist. A week later, he was gone. He packed a single suitcase with an emotionless efficiency that was more terrifying than any angry outburst. I need to think, Amara. I can't breathe here," was all he said. He didn't look back as he walked out the door. The truth of where he had gone came from pitying text from a mutual friend who had seen them together. "I'm so sorry, Amara. I saw Daniel moving his things into Tonia's apartment. My home is silent now. The morning light still streams in, but it feels cold and accusing. I look at the space where his crossword puzzles used to be, and the emptiness is a physical ache. The woman I called my sister, the girl I shared my childhood dreams with, didn't just steal my husband. She used the oldest, darkest magic to unravel the very fabric of his will, leaving me alone in the ruins of a love I believed was unbreakable. And the worst part is, I was the one who opened the door and invited the poison in. For a few fleeting months, Tonya was the queen of her own imagined kingdom. Her social media was a glittering facade of their life together, photos of them in restaurants I could never afford, her draped over Daniel in the passenger seat of a luxury sedan she hinted was his. The neighborhood gossip, which had once pitied me, now buzzed with a twisted admiration for her. "That Tonya," they'd whisper, "she finally landed a rich one. She knew what she was doing." I saw them once, at the grocery store. Daniel looked thinner, the calm confidence I loved replaced by a tense, hollowed-out weariness. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Tonya, however, gripped his arm possessively, her smile a sharp, victorious thing. She was living the dream she had convinced herself was real. But dreams built on lies and manipulation have a way of collapsing. The first crack appeared when Daniel's firm, a small but respected outfit, unexpectedly shut down. The rich architect was suddenly, undeniably, unemployed. The luxury car, as I'd suspected, vanished. It had been a company vehicle, returned to his former boss. The expensive dinner stopped. The rent on Tonia's chic apartment, it turned out, was now a crushing burden. The whispers in the neighborhood changed tone. The admiration curdled into pity and then into morbid fascination. Tanya's carefully constructed world was turning to dust in her hands, and her frustration began to leak out in public. People saw them arguing on the street, her face contorted with a rage I had never seen before. The charming, calculated woman was gone, replaced by someone desperate and unhinged. The very magic she had used to ensnare him now seemed to be a cage for them both, a poison that had corrupted their foundation. The final act of their tragedy played out on a rain-slicked evening. A neighbor called me, her voice hushed and urgent. "Amara, you need to see this. It's Tonya." I looked out my window. There, under the flickering glow of a street lamp, was Tonya. She was barefoot, her hair plastered to her face, her expensive clothes soaked and muddy. In her hand, she clutched the remnants of a charm, the twin to the red bracelet, now broken and dangling. She was spinning in a circle, screaming his name into the indifferent night. "Daniel! Daniel, come back! You belong to me! The charm, it's broken! It's not working!" Her cries were the raw, unraveling sound of a soul completely lost. The magic had failed, and with it, the illusion of her perfect life had shattered. 2 days later, he came to my door. I opened it to find Daniel standing on my porch, a ghost of the man I had married. He was gaunt, his shoulders slumped. The red bracelet was gone from his wrist, leaving only a pale imprint of its presence. The shame in his eyes was a living thing. He was on my doorstep, a ghost in the familiar jacket I'd bought him. His eyes found the peephole, red-rimmed and desperate. "Amara," he began, his voice cracking. I was lost in a fog. She made me believe lies. His knees buckled and he fell onto the welcome mat I'd stitched with our names. "Please, forgive me. I have nothing left. I was a fool." A tear traced a path through the grime on his cheek. "I see it all now. It was always you. It was only ever you." I looked at him, at the broken man returned to my doorstep. I felt no anger, no vengeful joy. There was only a profound, quiet calm. The storm had passed and I had survived it. I didn't let him finish. I simply looked down at him, my voice steady and clear. "She used voodoo to take what was never hers," I said. "Not knowing what she took wasn't gold, just dust. I watched the words land, watched the final, devastating understanding dawn on his face. Then without another word, I closed the door. The lock clicked into place, a soft final sound. I turned and walked back into the quiet warmth of my home, a home I had kept safe through it all. I didn't look through the peephole. I didn't listen for his footsteps walking away, because sometimes karma doesn't rush. It doesn't need to scream or rage. It simply waits with infinite patience for the right moment to strike, leaving the poisoners to choke on their own brew. It took months of isolation and begging for me to try and work on my marriage with Daniel. We started with slow steps, prayers and therapy, because if we're being honest, I was the one who let Tonya in to bewitch my husband even when he was hesitant. And the bracelet that night, I insisted. It took me time to go through the heartbreak and realize he never wanted to leave me. He was only under a spell. The real betrayal came from Tonya. Now, as we sit at home, I'm happy I gave this marriage another chance, because I can't imagine life without Daniel. Not long after, Daniel got a new job, one that truly valued his brilliance and calm strength. I watched him come home each evening with a light in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Together, we moved into a bigger house, a fresh start filled with laughter instead of whispers, and love instead of fear. Sometimes I still think about the past, about how close we came to losing everything. But then Daniel's hand finds mine, warm and steady, and I know we've built something stronger from the ashes. So now my weeks are spent gardening, picking out wallpaper, or just chilling by the pool in our backyard. Weekends are even better, with short destination vacations. One day, as we sat on the deck of his yacht, he pressed a kiss to my forehead and said, "I love you so much, Amara. I don't know what I would do without you." I smiled and hugged him because I wouldn't have wanted it to end any other way. Things worked out in the end, and I'm grateful for that every day. So, bye then. The end.